I want to start reading from the Passover Haggadah, the graphic novel. This is a great Haggadah. It's the complete Haggadah, but as you see, it's told in a graphic novel or a comic book form. I'm going to be going through several of the sections of the Haggadah and reading them with you and showing you the pictures that are there. So, the characters are comic book characters. Some of them are animals, and some of them are people, like that. So we'll be switching from animals and people. There's also a lot of the writing is in Hebrew, and a lot of the writing is in English. And we'll be switching back and forth just so you hear what the Hebrew sounds like. The first page says, Chag Pesach v'Sameach. Chag means holiday. Pesach is the name of the holiday in Hebrew. And Sameach means happy. So you should have a happy Passover. Happy Passover holiday. Welcome to the Passover Haggadah graphic novel. That's everything that we said already. Before we begin our Seder together, does anyone have any questions? The little girl says, when do we eat? The father, who is a goat, I think, says, the festival meal is on page 100. Next question. Let's quickly run to page 100 and see what it says. Everybody's sitting down to eat. So he was right. It is on page 100 that we're eating. The name of that title is Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan means table, and Aruch means set. So it's a set table, meaning it's got the plates and the dishes and the food on it already, and a tablecloth. Let's go back to the beginning. Why can't we eat now? The little girl asks. Good question. Before I answer it, let me ask you, what are we celebrating at the Pesach Seder? She answers, freedom. Right. Tonight we're commemorating our journey from shame of slavery to praising God for our freedom and eternal liberation. Originally, we would have eaten right away after 2,000 years ago in the Jerusalem temple. We celebrate Pesach by fulfilling God's commandment in the book of Exodus and sacrificing the Paschal lamb. We don't have any sacrifices anymore. Following the destruction of the first and second temples, the sacrifices ended, but we continued celebrating the festival at dinner theater, during which families reenact our history, and we do that how? In other words, when we can't do something sometimes, we end up acting it out, or telling the story, or saying a prayer sometimes. So how do we do it? The father asks, and she answers, by getting kids like me to ask questions. And that's what tonight is all about. It's about asking questions and trying to find out the answers. The Haggadah was written in two ancient languages, Hebrew and Aramaic. Hebrew I understand because the Jews in Israel spoke Hebrew. But why Aramaic? Well, Aramaic was a language that people spoke at the time of the writing of the Haggadah. So that means that we can tell the Haggadah in any language we want to. We can tell it in English or Spanish or French or German or Sumerian if we knew Sumerian, but I don't know Sumerian. One moment we're in the Roman period, the next we're back in Exodus, and then we're back to the future, on and on through all of recorded time. Hence, the Passover Haggadah graphic novel. No one says hence anymore. Only questions, my love, such as what does the Haggadah mean? The answer is storytelling. That's true. In Hebrew, to tell a story is to lahagid, to tell. A Haggadah is a book of tellings or a book of stories. We connect all the generations. He became a superhero. I don't know why he became a superhero. He became a superhero, and he says, we connect all the generations from the past and the future by all of us saying the stories. That is a Seder plate. We have Seder plates on our table, and there are various different items on the Seder plate. They are chazeret, a bitter leafy vegetable like romaine lettuce, the zeroa, which is a shank bone, which means it's a bone from a piece of meat. And that reminds us of the Paschal lamb. There is an egg. There's this really sweet apple fruit that's made with apples and wine and cinnamon and tastes really great, and it looks like the mortar that we used to make the brick. There are bitter herbs to remind us that it was a bitter time for us. There is salt water to remind us about the tears that we shed. And of course, there is matzah. The name of what's going on is the Seder. The Seder means in Hebrew, the order, meaning the table of contents of what's in a Haggadah. So we start off with Kiddush, which is what we say every Friday night and what we say at every holiday, and it sanctifies the holiday. It makes the holiday special. Then we do rinsing of the hands without saying a bracha, which is a very strange thing, because normally when we rinse the hands, we say the bracha al netilat yadayim. Then we eat the karpas, which is a vegetable that we dip in the salt water, and we eat it, and we say a bracha for that, because we always say a blessing before we eat anything in order to remind ourselves that everything comes with the help of God as well. The farmers do the work. We go out to the supermarket and pay the people who stock the shelves. We give them the money to the checkout counters. but behind everything, God is also helping us. So we say a blessing saying, thanks, God, just like we say, thanks to the checkout counter girl. Or boy. Why should I say girl? Boy. Then we do yachatz, breaking of the matzah, the middle matzah. The middle matzah breaking is very special because after a while, we're going to take half of that matzah and hide it. That hiding is called the afikomen. That's going to be the last thing that we eat. Afikomen is a Greek word. I think it means dessert. It's the last thing that we eat. Usually I hide the afikomen and you find the afikomen, and then you hide the afikomen and tell me that I've got to give you gifts in order to get the afikomen back. It all gets very involved. I'm not sure about that. Then we do magid. Magid is like the word Haggadah, magid, Haggadah. So it tells a story, lahagid, to tell. Then we get up again and wash our hands a second time. The reason why we do it a second time is because now we're going to eat matzah, which is a type of bread, and so we have to say a blessing on it. Then we take the matzah out and eat it. Then we take the maror, the bitter herbs, out and eat it. Then there's a story about this rabbi named Hillel who used to take the matzah and the paschal lamb and the bitter herbs and eat them together. Sounds like a sandwich to me. He may have been the first person to invent sandwich. I have a feeling, though, that sandwiches were invented before. We just don't know who. But we certainly know that Hillel used to make sandwiches. Then, Shulchan Aruch. That's the time that I mentioned before that everybody loves. That's the part where we eat. Tzafon is eating the afikomen after the meal. Remember I said afikomen, Greek word for dessert, last thing that we eat. And there's all this bargaining that goes on. I'm not so sure about that. I think we should skip the bargaining part. Then we say Baruch, which is the first words when we say blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, blessed are you, our God. So Baruch, and it's grace after meals. It's saying the blessing, thanking God for the meal that we had. Then we do Hallel, which is songs, also praising God or telling the story of the Haggadah. And then finally we have the conclusion, the last couple of songs of the Haggadah. That's the table of contents. That's the order or the seder of what we're going to do. The next video is going to be about Kadesh, to say the blessings before any holiday. Speak to you soon.